Welcome back, everyone. This time, we're going deep on conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah. These are everywhere you look these
It
days.
feels like it, right? And it's tough because sometimes it feels like they're harmless,
Mhm.
Just like a fun little thing people talk about, but other times they can really affect people's lives.
Absolutely. We see it all the time. It's not just like a fun thing to think about.
Yeah.
It's actually affecting, you know, our politics, our health.
Yeah. Family gatherings, right?
Oh, don't even get me started on that.
So that's what we're here to do today.
Yeah,
Kind of like give everyone a guide to understanding these theories a little bit better,
for sure.
why people believe them, and how to maybe navigate some of those conversations that you might have with family or friends who
Right.
are down the rabbit hole a little bit.
Yeah, because it can be really tricky sometimes.
Mhm.
Like
Mm.
trying to talk to someone who's just so set in their beliefs.
Yeah, and you don't want to like ruin a family gathering over it either. So we're going to hopefully give you guys some tools to help you out with that. And our main source material this time is this fantastic article.
Yeah, it's called How to Keep Conspiracy Theories from Ruining Your Time with Family.
Ooh, that's very appropriate.
Right.
Very timely.
It's so relevant.
So, first of all, like, how do we even define a conspiracy theory? Like, it's not just believing in ghosts or,
Right.
Bigfoot. It's got to be something else.
Yeah, so the main thing is like a secret plot.
Okay.
Usually a group is involved and they're like working against the common good.
Okay. So it can't just be like one person working in secret.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be like an organized effort
Okay. Got
to
it.
do something sneaky.
Sneaky. And there's never any proof.
Right. Yeah. It's like all suspicion and speculation,
Yeah.
no evidence.
Okay. So that's like a key thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, like the events of 9/11, that was obviously a horrific terrorist attack, but some people believe it was an inside job by the government.
Exactly.
So that would be like the conspiracy theory side of it. And then with vaccines, like acknowledging that there are side effects, some people could have a bad reaction. That's different from thinking that vaccines are a tool for population control.
Right. Right. It's like taking a kernel of truth and then blowing it way out of proportion.
But it's funny because I was reading this article and I was a little bit surprised
Oh, yeah.
to find out that research shows over half of all people believe in at least one conspiracy theory.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's kind of humbling.
It is. It is. Makes you wonder what yours is,
Yeah,
what you're blind to.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the good news is apparently it's not like way more people are believing in them now than in the past.
Yeah, the research shows that those belief levels have been pretty stable over time.
That's good.
Yeah. It's not necessarily that more people believe them, but it does seem like we hear about them a lot more
That's true.
these days.
Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is the media, right? They're covering these theories more,
Yeah.
especially when politicians get involved and start using that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, that makes sense because if you see it on the news, when
Yeah.
you see a politician talking about it, it seems more believable, more mainstream.
Right, it normalizes it.
Yeah, and that can have some really serious consequences.
Absolutely.
I mean, the article talked about the El Paso shooter and how his actions were actually influenced
It's a scary thought.
by these really dangerous conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it shows you how these things can actually lead to violence.
And even if it's not something that extreme, it still can have an impact on things like people choosing not to vaccinate.
Right, which has a huge effect on public health.
Yeah, so it's not always just like a harmless thing.
Definitely not.
So now that we've kind of established that conspiracy theories are out there and that they can have real world effects,
Yeah.
let's talk about why people are drawn to them.
Okay.
So the article breaks down the psychology of believing in these things, and it outlines 6 main factors.
6. Okay, let's hear them.
And the first one is called base rate.
Okay.
And basically it means that humans are wired to trust information initially.
I mean, that makes sense.
Right.
We can't question everything we hear all the time.
We would never get anything done.
Right, we'd be paralyzed.
But it does make you vulnerable
yeah.
to believing things that aren't true.
Especially if it's presented in a way that feels credible or, like you said, it already aligns with some of our existing beliefs.
Right, and that leads us to the second factor, which is emotional attachment.
Okay.
We tend to defend the beliefs that align with our emotions and identity.
So it's not just about, like, the facts.
Yeah.
It's also about how we feel
Yes.
about those facts.
It's like if you believe in something really strongly and it's part of how you see yourself,
Mm-hmm.
if someone challenges that belief, it can feel like a personal attack.
Right. That's like you're being attacked, not just your ideas.
Yeah, and that's why these conversations get so heated sometimes.
Definitely. And that ties into the third factor, consistency.
Okay.
The more we're exposed to a claim, the more true it seems.
So that's where those echo chambers online come into play.
Exactly like on social media. You get fed the same information over and over again.
It just reinforces what you already think.
Right, and it makes it really hard to break free from that cycle.
And the fourth factor is called proportionality bias.
Okay.
And that's the idea that big events need big explanations.
So like with JFK's assassination?
Yes. Like the idea of a lone gunman
Right.
doing that just didn't sit right with some people.
It felt too simple.
Right, like it just didn't feel big enough.
Exactly. So that fueled all sorts of conspiracy theories.
It's like they needed a more complicated explanation
A more dramatic
to
explanation.
match the magnitude of the event.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's number 5?
Okay, so the fifth one is intentionality bias.
Intentionality bias.
And that's our tendency to analyze other people's motives,
Okay.
which can lead to us thinking they have these hidden agendas even when they might not.
So we're always trying to figure out why people do what they do.
Right, like what's the ulterior motive?
Right. Which can be dangerous, I guess.
Yeah, it can lead us to see conspiracies where there are none.
Like with all those deep state theories,
Yeah.
people attributing all these sinister motives to government officials,
Right.
when maybe there's a simpler explanation.
Like maybe they're just doing their jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
But we always assume there's like a puppet master behind the scenes.
It's more exciting that way.
True.
Okay, so what's the last one? Number 6.
Okay, the sixth and final factor is pattern seeking.
Pattern seeking.
So humans are naturally wired to find patterns.
Right. We're trying to make sense of the world.
Right, and that's usually a good thing, but when something is really ambiguous,
Like a pandemic.
yeah, like a pandemic or a political assassination or any kind of event like that,
Okay.
it can lead us to connect dots that aren't actually related.
So we're trying to find order in chaos,
Yes.
even if it means creating a false sense of order.
Exactly.
That's a good way to put it.
So these 6 factors give us a really interesting framework for thinking about why people might believe in conspiracy theories.
It's really insightful.
It's not just that they're gullible or anything like that.
Right. There are these deeper psychological factors at play.
Yeah, so now that we kind of have an understanding of why people believe in these things, let's talk about what to do about it.
Yeah. Like, how do you actually talk to someone who's deep in the rabbit hole?
Right. Is there even any hope of debunking these theories?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. And that's what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've talked about why people believe in these things, but what about actually addressing them? Like, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
It's hard, right? Like, how do you even start to debunk a conspiracy theory, especially when you're dealing with someone who's like really convinced?
Yeah, it can feel like an uphill battle sometimes.
For sure.
But the article actually gives us some hope here. It's not impossible. You just got to approach these conversations the right way, you know?
With empathy.
Yeah, like really trying to understand where they're coming from,
Okay.
not judging them or anything.
So, like, what's the first step? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, first of all, don't expect miracles.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have this like big dramatic conversion overnight. It's more about kind of planting those seeds of doubt
Right.
and encouraging them to think a little more critically.
So it's a process,
Yeah, exactly.
not like a one-time fix.
No, it takes time.
And patience.
Lots of patience.
Okay, what else?
And remember to be kind.
Yeah.
But don't be confrontational.
Right.
Or talk down to them.
Right.
We don't want to like alienate them.
Yeah, because then they'll just shut down and they'll lose that connection.
Right. So focus on connecting with them on a personal level.
Okay.
Find some common ground. Talk about shared values.
So, like, don't just, like, throw facts at them right away.
Right. Start with the human connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So once you've established that connection.
Yeah, then you can start to introduce some facts, some evidence.
Okay. But is it really that easy, though? Like, just show them the facts and they'll change their minds.
Well, no, not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more complicated than that
Yeah.
because some misinformation is hard to debunk
Right.
if there's not like a clear alternative explanation.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like the example with the vaccines and autism.
Right.
Even though science has shown that there's no link,
Yeah.
there's still a lot we don't know about autism.
And that can create this void that conspiracy theories can fill.
Right. People want answers.
Yeah.
If they can't find them in science,
Yeah.
they might look for them elsewhere.
Okay, so what do we do in those situations?
Well, the key is to just keep presenting the facts
Okay.
calmly and repeatedly.
Like, just keep hitting them with the truth.
Not hitting them, but, just
Okay.
gently nudging them towards the truth.
So it's about persistence.
Yeah, and patience.
And hoping that eventually something will click.
Hopefully.
Okay, so what else can we do?
The article also suggests pointing to legitimate investigations.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because a lot of times conspiracy theories involve these like shadowy figures
Right.
and secret cover-ups.
Yeah.
So you can remind them that in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are actually investigating these things.
Like journalists.
Yeah, journalists, legal professionals.
Right.
If there was a real conspiracy going on,
Yeah.
they would probably be the ones to uncover it.
So, like, if someone's talking about some massive government cover-up,
Right.
you can be like, well, there are people whose job it is to look into that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And they haven't found anything.
Right. So maybe there's nothing there.
Okay. Good point.
And speaking of uncovering things, early intervention is key.
What do you mean?
Like, if we can help people develop critical thinking skills early on,
Oh, but hey.
they'll be less likely to fall for these things in the first place.
It's like giving them a vaccine against conspiracy theories.
Yeah, exactly.
Teach them how to evaluate information, how to question their sources.
How to spot those red flags.
Yeah, it's all about being a savvy information consumer.
Right. So it's not just about debunking specific theories.
No.
It's about giving people the tools to think critically in general.
Right, so they can navigate this crazy information landscape.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's all about empowering people to think for themselves.
This has been really helpful.
Yeah.
We've learned so much about the psychology of conspiracy theories,
Right.
the reasons why people believe in them,
Yeah.
and some strategies for talking to loved ones who might be caught up in these beliefs.
Hopefully these tools will help you out there.
Right, because we all know someone
We all do.
who believes in at least one conspiracy theory.
It's true, and remember that includes you too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
What's your conspiracy theory?
I'm not sure I want to share that.
That's okay.
But it's a good question for everyone to think about.
Yeah. What are you blind to?
Right, what are your biases?
And how can you use those critical thinking skills to examine them more closely? That's something to ponder. You know, it's wild to think that we all probably know someone who believes in at least one conspiracy theory.
I know, right? Like, it's easy to think of them as like a fringe group,
Yeah.
but the fact that everyone, almost everyone, subscribes to at least one is just, it's fascinating.
It is. It really shows you how common this kind of thinking is.
Yeah, it's not just like a few people on the internet. You know?
Exactly. It's like woven into the fabric of society.
It makes you wonder why, right?
Hmm.
Like, what is it about us that makes us so prone to these kinds of beliefs?
It's like a fundamental part of being human or something.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about these 6 psychological factors
Right.
that make us more susceptible to these explanations.
And I think what's interesting is that they really point to those deeper human needs.
Yeah.
Like the need to understand, the need to feel safe and in control.
Right.
Especially when faced with something that's really scary or confusing.
Like when bad things happen. Our brains just want to make sense of it, you know?
Right. And sometimes a conspiracy theory just feels like the easiest way to do that.
It's comforting in a way, even if it's not true.
Yeah, it's like putting a puzzle together, even if some of the pieces don't actually fit.
You just force them in there
Yeah, exactly.
because you want that picture to be complete.
So these beliefs, they're not always coming from a bad place.
Right.
It's often just people trying to cope with a world that feels chaotic and scary.
Exactly. So it's important to keep that in mind
Yeah.
when you're talking to someone who believes in these things.
Don't just dismiss them.
Right. Try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And remember that we all have our own biases,
That's so true.
our blind spots.
Yeah. And this whole deep dive has really made me think about that.
Me too.
It's like we can't just point fingers at other people
No.
because we all have our own vulnerabilities.
We all fall for things sometimes.
Yeah, and it's about being aware of that, being critical thinkers.
Right. But also staying open to new ideas, new perspectives.
Yeah, it's a balance.
It is.
So everyone listening out there, as you go about your day, remember to stay curious, stay skeptical, and most importantly,
Keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
exactly.
Don't be afraid to question things. It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.